suggest we take a look at some of the moves in the early game. What also surprised me is how much emphasis FPX put in that top lane and spending time there and focusing the ganks there as well.
Yeah, here's what surprised me. FPX's entire final was about 4-man dives bot against Uzi and for LWX, and they seemed ill-prepared to handle Splyce's bottom lane focus, and also funneled so much of their gold onto Gimkun, who I think his greatest strength is playing weak side top laner, so that whole early game was strange.
Because you look at this play, for example, Vizicachi gets the advantage out of this play because he gets the preferential lane state, and I gotta say, overall, the early game on both sides was pretty loose. There was definitely some skill errors, the lane spot error there. It was definitely not what we were expecting in the early game.
But then you started to kind of see how Splyce's composition is supposed to work.
And this was beautiful.
When you have a range advantage with the Tristana, and then you have the event horizon in front of it, the disengage from the Gragas, the lantern from the Thresh, and then a Gangplank ultimate on top of it, it's supposed to be about so much utility and zone control, and then slowly walking Tristana through people. And anytime Splyce were able to either get choke points or kind of set up their line of scrimmage, that's where their composition really thrived. But they also had to balance the ferocity of FPX. The amount of times that suddenly FPX would just flash on top of you and find plays in a split-second window.
And for Skurin, we have a great example here with the box going down. The event horizon, I'm pretty sure cooldown was buffed in recent patches. It's just so frustrating for Renekton, Ryze, and other short-range champions to close the distance. And so much of this mid-game, we were prepping stats for what if a team goes 0-2 in groups. Only 3 have ever gotten out of groups from there. It really felt like FPX were going to send out their best shot twice in groups and get nothing done.
And I think that's why this game was really a mixed bag, because Splyce will want to build on what they accomplished pre-Baron throw. But there were also a few plays in there, like when we saw FPX was down 3,000 or 4,000 gold and Doinby would just rise ult into 3 or 4 things and they'd get a kill off of it. That's a play that only FPX can see and only FPX can make. But I just didn't expect them to be down 4,000 gold to the third seed team from the LEC.
The fact is, you don't want to have to rely on those moments too often if you find yourself in that position.
Speaking
I mean, to be fair, that is kind of FPX in the core of them. Yeah, they do have a snowball and they do tend to run away with games, but if you think about like Doinby's high moments and the soul of this team, it is the fact that they see those opportunities that others do not. The fact that they instantaneously jump on you and rip you apart in your setup.
Almost sounded like you were talking about G2 in moments, because they also like to play in that, but there are differences here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% get it. If people didn't watch the LPL and they've seen these 2 games, you would definitely call FPX way overhyped, because they have not shown, to me, the quality, even if they've shown the style that they showed in the LPL.
But if someone throws something at you, you just got to catch it.
And
Let's take a look once again at this Baron replay.
Do we have to?
Yes, we have to.
With the Mountain Drake for Splyce right here, and with all the tools they could potentially have to get Tien out of the Baron pit, you have to put aggro onto the Lee Sin. You can't just let him sit there. Then the kick was huge.
And if you notice, they're spending so much time trying to move Doinby from the picture, and no one is trying to deal with the potential threat of Lee Sin over. And they have incredible amounts of CC and potentially flashes to just get over and stop him.
And this is what we've wanted for Splyce. We know that they're a consistent team. We want them to be a clutch team. When they have these big moments, when it comes down to clutch decision making.
But he gets in the pit with the Baron.
This kick was
I understand,
epic.
but this is why Fnatic and G2 have such a massive gap over Splyce, and these are the moments that they need to shore up. If they had the clutch decision making to go over the wall to kill the Lee Sin, this is a completely different tone and a completely different desk.
But they didn't even need to hit a higher level to stop that Baron. At 2,000 health, coming in, everyone seemingly distracted. Like, that was a pretty bread and butter play that they seriously fumbled, and the results were massive.
Once a VOD review for Splyce, indeed. The Oppo player of the game is Doinby, because even with the faults in that game, that entire team, and especially this man, they step up when it matters. And this is why...
Yeah, sorry, I thought that was the play that I saw in the mid game of the Ryze ult going in. This is just kind of the cleanup after they had already came back in the game, but I think he had over 100 CS advantage over Humanoid in the mid lane. He maxed out his bounty. You can see 509. Really, he was the one just kind of like willing FPX into that game.
And I don't think we have that much time left, but I do want to kind of talk about the state of FPX now in this group and looking forward. As said already, tipped as one of the favorites, coming from the region that won the World Championship and looking so strong domestically.
So we got LGD over here.
Yes.
Okay.
And we got IG here.
Okay, I'm speaking your language.
Right now, I feel like FPX is like wavering over here.
I think more to the left. More to the
Maybe
left.
maybe right there.
Yeah.
But I think their peak is still here. It's just I'm questionable.
Well, when you see some of the plays they make here in the end, you know that peak is there, right?
But you just look at it and it's like, okay, you lost your first game to J-Team, and then in this particular game, you needed a Baron throw just to get back into it. So in terms of proactive kind of starting and snowballing, which is the FPX bread and butter, they've done none of it.
Good point. I don't like to make excuses for teams either, but there is that factor of they're at Worlds for the first time. It is all very stressful, and they were in a game where they were behind and they fought their way back. Should we account much to that?
Yes, the nature of FPX's style is that because they're forced to fight you, you can't just gentleman's agreement and be like, we're not going to fight. If a team runs at you, it's going to break down and get messy. So I think that anytime you see FPX in a game, either they're going to massively crush opponents and just look like gods, or it's going to look like a very messy game, win or lose. So that should be the expectation. This is a very different dominance than the one of like the SKT pass. Like when SKT were dominant, it was because it was clean, it was methodical, and they just choked you out. FPX are not that team, even at their highs.
If anything, it's very entertaining, though. So it was a fun game to watch, and FPX walk away with the win. We are going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with